Hey guys, this is a follow-up to the video I uploaded earlier this week. If you haven't seen that video, you should watch it to get up to speed. I'll put a link in the description and a thing you can click somewhere up here. But the short version is I got 2 out-of-spec Young Manufacturing bolt carrier groups in a row from KE Arms, but they have refunded my money and treated me well. Regardless of that, I probably won't be buying Young Manufacturing bolt carrier groups in the future, and their public response to this reinforces my position on that. I posted the original video and a description to the Cantina on Tatooine, which is to say AR15.com, and got a public response from Russell Fagan of KE Arms as well as a video from him. In his video, Russell puts the bolt carrier group in several KE Arms manufactured uppers to demonstrate that it fits in their uppers, and then says the following.
I believe he is dealing with a tolerance stacking situation that made this bolt carrier group incompatible with his particular upper. I don't believe there's a particular problem with this bolt carrier group. It will in fact be going out to someone else who has already emailed me about purchasing it.
So let's address that first statement. Russell claims I'm dealing with a tolerance stacking situation that made this bolt carrier group incompatible with my particular upper. This suggests to me that Russell didn't watch my original video because I demonstrated 2 uppers that were incompatible with their bolt carrier group, not just one. I also demonstrated those uppers were compatible with 3 other bolt carrier groups of known quality, a Toolcraft, a BCM, and a 2012 production from Young themselves. But whether Russell watched my video is neither here nor there. He claims my upper is the problem, and I'm going to document why that isn't the case using the M4 blueprints. So this is going to take a while to fully flesh out, but I trust that if you watch to the end, you will have found it well worth your time. After all, knowing how to diagnose these issues and debunk the claims of companies trying to save face may come in handy for you someday. So first of all, we need to understand what we're measuring and why. Not including the cam pin, there are 6 major sliding surfaces on a bolt carrier that touch the upper receiver. These 6 surfaces are the 4 rails surrounding the front half of the bolt carrier and the 2 sides of the gas key. And on a phosphated carrier, you will see these surfaces become shiny as they wear in with age. The M4 blueprints, which you can obtain from friends in low places, give a dimension for these and a machining tolerance. They also give a dimension and machining tolerance for the matching surfaces inside the upper receiver. The people who came up with these blueprints were pretty smart. Russell states that I have a tolerance stacking issue, but that's actually not possible in this particular situation if all of the parts are in spec. At the extreme end of the tolerance range for both parts, that is to say the largest in-spec bolt carrier and gas key, as well as the smallest in-spec upper, you will still get an easy sliding fit. Again, this is due to the design of people much smarter than myself. So let's start with the bolt carrier. First of all, it's worth pointing out that you cannot measure this dimension using calipers because the bearing surfaces, here, 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 and here, are not separated by 180 degrees. But if there's an imaginary circle around the bolt carrier that touches the bearing surfaces, the dimension of this circle is 0.9945 inches plus or minus 1 thou. So the largest in-spec bolt carrier has an outside diameter around the bearing surfaces of 0.9955 inches. Next up, the gas key. This part you can measure with a set of calipers because it's simple parallel flat surfaces. The M4 blueprint says the width should be 0.4005 inches plus or minus 1 thou. So the largest in-spec gas key is 0.4015 inches wide. Now, the upper receiver, of course, has dimensions where it interfaces with the ones I've already gone over on the carrier. Where the gas key rides, the width of that channel is specified at 0.413 plus 10 thou minus 0. So the smallest this can be machined and still be in spec is 0.413. As for the cylindrical hole through the upper receiver where the bearing surfaces of the carrier ride, that bore is specified at exactly 1 inch. Here things get a little muddy, because the tolerance on the plus side can vary throughout the length of the upper, but one thing to note is that the tolerance on the negative side is always 0, so the minimum inside diameter of the upper is exactly 1 inch. Now, it's worth pointing out that both of these dimensions are as machined, and I'm led to believe that the anodizing can add around 1 thou, but of course anodizing thickness can vary. So let's say the minimum inside diameter of the upper is 0.998 inches, and the minimum width of the channel is 0.411 inches. So with these numbers in hand, I mentioned before that at the extreme end of the tolerance range for both the upper and bolt carrier, you will still get an easy sliding fit. All we have to do is some subtraction. So for the carrier to upper fit, the maximal in-spec carrier size of 0.9955 and the minimal in-spec upper size of 0.998 leaves us with, at a minimum, 2.5 thou of clearance. If you want to get technical, that's in the neighborhood of an RC7 sliding fit. Now for the carrier key to upper fit, the maximal in-spec carrier key width of 0.4015 and the minimal in-spec channel width in the upper of 0.411 inches leaves us with, at minimum, 9.5 thou of clearance. So again, assuming all of the parts are in spec, you can't get what I demonstrated on video with the Young Manufacturing bolt carrier that there is no particular problem with. So all I have to do to prove that incorrect is prove that my uppers are in spec. Problem is, I don't have thousands of dollars in gauges, but I can use proxies for gauges, as I will demonstrate. Now, one thing I want to point out is you shouldn't measure the inside of a bore with calipers. The jaws of the calipers have flats on them, and although they're small, it does mean that when you're measuring the inside of a cylindrical bore, you'll get a smaller number than the actual value because you can't push the flat of the caliper jaw all the way into the largest dimension of the hole. It's a pretty basic geometry problem, and this is the whole reason pin gauge sets exist. So while I don't have a gauge for the upper receiver bore, what I do have is a Midwest Industries URR, which is larger than an in-spec bolt carrier by design for a snug fit. The outside of this particular URR measures 0.998 if I get it at the tightest spot, which happens to be the same as a minimum in-spec upper. So if this URR fits without the use of a hammer, the bore in the upper must be as large or larger than the minimum spec. I don't have a gauge for the gas key channel either, but what I do have is this particular Raptor charging handle. The protruding tip of a charging handle rides in the same space in the upper as the carrier key, which you can see if you look down the length. You can see the bearing surface of the carrier key back here takes up the same space in the upper as the tip on a charging handle. And the tip on this particular charging handle happens to measure 0.415 inches. And if that number sounds familiar, it's because that's the maximum width of a gas key. So if this charging handle fits with a good bit of clearance, so too should any in-spec gas key. So now let's use our two improvised gauges to check the two uppers that I showed on video as not fitting the bolt carrier that KE Arms stated they don't see a problem with. So we've got my Capco USGI M16A2 upper, and if I put the Raptor charging handle in it, we're looking for a good bit of tolerance here because we want to see a gap, and you can see that it is free to move all along the length of the upper receiver. If we put the Midwest Industries URR inside, and again, this is larger than an in-spec bolt carrier would be by design, we can see that it slides all the way up until it engages the star chamber very freely. This is not something that I have to smash in. I'm just using thumb pressure to move it back and forth. So therefore, this upper must be in spec. As to the Aero receiver, put the Raptor charging handle in, and we check for clearance all the way along the entire length. And we can see that we have that clearance. So that channel must be able to fit a maximally sized carrier key. Again, the Midwest Industries URR. And again, I can slide it all the way up into the point where it engages the star chamber, and it doesn't really take anything extra. So this upper must be larger than 0.0998. So the conclusion here is pretty easy. If both parts are in spec, even at the extreme end of the spec in the worst possible direction, so-called tolerance stacking, they should still fit. I have demonstrated that my uppers are in spec. Therefore, the bolt carrier group I received must have been out of spec. QED. So what really sucks about this whole situation is that I liked Young Manufacturing as a company before all of this. We need more good options in the marketplace, not less. And this is absolutely a loss for the AR-15 community that this company that formerly put out great products, put out a couple of lemons, and instead of introspection on their part in search of a solution, we get denial, counter-accusations. That's not productive. I have a feeling that we've all experienced a heyday of mass availability of good quality parts, and that it's now in the rearview mirror. I'm not the only one who has had issues with parts like this being out of spec in this post-2020 world. I'm led to believe that such issues are becoming more and more common, even from companies that have been built up as vanguards of quality, such as Young Manufacturing. Nothing is sacred. And I'm sure there will be those who will say that I must be some sort of KE Arms hater, that my sole goal is just to trash their products, and that I'm just an internet troll, and that's my whole game. I don't think anything could be further from the truth. So on a closing note, I used the refund that I got from KE Arms to purchase this Black River Tactical Chrome bolt carrier group. Don't take this as an endorsement, as I don't know how this bolt carrier group will stand up to actual use. For what it's worth, Forward Control's Design sells these through their site, and they do seem to be well regarded. It's not a slick side with the KE, but it does fit in all of my uppers, just like every other bolt carrier group I've ever purchased in my entire life up until a few weeks ago. So with that, thanks for watching. If you found this video valuable, you might like and subscribe, or don't. You're an adult, and I trust you to make your own decisions. Have a good day.